Hey guys, tonight we're going all the way back, to a cold Kentucky forest where the sky hangs low, the wolves sing in the dark, and you're about to be born into a world of creaking cabins, flickering firelight, and dirt floors. You probably won't survive this, not without a scratchy blanket, a bit of cornmeal, and a mother who hums you through the night. 50. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're settling in, comment your location and local time. I love seeing where in the world you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born in a one-room log cabin on a chilly February morning, the 12th day of 1809. The wind snakes between the cracks in the wood, and outside, it smells of wet soil and chimney smoke. Your name is Abraham. Your mother wraps you in a rough linen cloth. There's no doctor, only the gentle hands of your mother, Nancy, and the stillness of the Kentucky woods. Everything around you is quiet and modest. There's a single window, a dirt floor, and a hearth built from uneven stones. Chickens rustle outside the door. In the early mornings, you can hear the faint lowing of cattle beyond the trees. This is Hardin County, though it will one day be called LaRue. To you, it's just home. You grow fast, not just in inches but in silence. Your father, Thomas Lincoln, is a sturdy, restless man, a carpenter by trade. He works hard, mostly with his hands, building furniture, clearing land, and doing whatever he must to feed his small family. But the land is uncertain. Ownership is slippery, and so you move again, this time to Knob Creek Farm, just a few miles away. You're still small, maybe 2 or 3, when you fall into the creek and nearly drown. Someone grabs you just in time. You'll remember that cold water, and the way it swallowed the sky for a sec, for the rest of your life. School, if you can call it that, is rare. You go when it's possible, when there isn't corn to hoe or logs to split. You learn from a few traveling teachers, each one leaving just as quickly as they came. All in all, you'll only get about a year's worth of formal education. But that's not the full story. At night, after the chores are done, you sit by the fire with a book balanced on your knees. You trace the shapes of the letters with a quiet hunger, mouthing the words slowly like a prayer. The Bible, Aesop's Fables, and later, a tattered copy of Pilgrim's Progress. Your mind stretches far beyond the small cabin. In 1816, your family moves again, this time to the thick woods of southern Indiana. You help chop down trees to build a new cabin, watching as snow gathers in the corners of the roof. You're 7 now. Life here is tougher. Wilder. More isolated. Your mother, Nancy, grows weak. It starts quietly, a pale complexion, then shivering, then long days in bed. The sickness spreads fast. Milk sickness, they call it, a strange, creeping poison from cows who've eaten snakeroot. There's nothing to be done. No cures. No doctors. She dies when you're just 9. The cabin feels larger now, and colder. Your sister, Sarah, tries to take care of you, cooking what she can, humming the songs your mother used to sing. You sit by the fire and pretend you don't hear her crying. A few months pass, and your father leaves, rides off to Kentucky to find a new wife. It takes weeks. When he returns, he brings Sarah Bush Johnston, a widow with her own children. She's kind, and she brings books. You don't say much, but you listen. And you read. Sometimes, when the winter is sharp enough, the ink in your pen freezes. You carve letters into wooden shingles with a piece of charcoal. You teach yourself new words, holding them in your mouth like river stones. Equanimity, perseverance, eloquence. You don't quite know what they mean yet, but you love how they sound. One night, a neighbor comes by, warning of panthers in the woods. You look out the small window, and the trees are moving, gently, like breath. You wonder if you'll ever leave this place. If there's more to life than chopping wood and reading by firelight. You grow taller than most. By age 14, you tower over nearly everyone. Long limbs. Long pauses. Long stares into the distance. People call you quiet. Strange. Some think you're slow. But you're just thinking, always thinking. Here's a little fringe fact: you once wrote a poem about a hunter who died and was buried with his dog. It was simple. Melancholy. And oddly beautiful for a teenage farm boy in Indiana. Death, distance, and deep thinking would follow you all your life. But for now, it's just the Indiana woods, the sound of your father's axe in the distance, and your own mind, stretching far beyond the cabin walls. You don't know it yet, but your name will one day echo in marble halls and whispered prayers. You'll be carved in stone and stitched into schoolbooks. But tonight, you're just Abraham, wrapped in a homespun blanket, listening to the snow fall gently on a wooden roof. And you're falling asleep, slowly, with your hand resting on a page that smells faintly of wood smoke and ink. The air is still tonight. You've finished your chores, and your arms ache just slightly, the dull, honest ache of a day spent working the land. The fire pops in the corner, a soft orange glow flickering on the logs. You stretch out on your belly, pull a book closer, and begin to read by firelight. The book isn't new. Its pages are worn, its corners chewed. It might have once belonged to your stepmother's cousin, or a neighbor down the road, or someone long dead. But it's yours now, for the evening, at least. You're not yet 15, but you've already read Robinson Crusoe, Aesop's Fables, and the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Over and over. By candlelight. By sunlight. By firelight. In between chores. In your head while splitting wood. Tonight, the wind is calm outside the cabin, and the only sound is your thumb brushing against the edge of the page. You whisper the words as you read them. You're still not fast, but you savor them like small bites of something sweet. The others in the house begin to drift off. Your father, Thomas, has always been skeptical of all this reading. He doesn't see what words can build that a hammer can't. But your stepmother, Sarah Bush, encourages you. She's noticed something in you, a kind of stillness and stubbornness that settles in your brow when you're locked in a sentence. You finish a paragraph, then start it again, slower this time. You imagine the scene, a man, shipwrecked, alone, building his own world from wreckage. You wonder if you could do the same. You feel, in a way, like you're already doing it, one word at a time, building something no one else can see yet. You begin to write, too. Mostly little reflections. A few shaky verses. You copy entire chapters into your own notebooks just to understand the rhythm. Your handwriting is awkward, tall, slightly crooked, but it's unmistakably yours. Sometimes you recite things aloud. Your voice is strange to you, too high, too breathy. But when it echoes around the cabin, the words seem to take on a new weight. They settle in your chest, like coal warming in the embers. During the day, you work. You're hired out to neighbors by your father, splitting rails, planting corn, driving teams of oxen. The pay never comes to you, it's the law, and you're still legally a minor, but you don't mind. Not yet. The muscles you build aren't just in your arms. They're in your patience. Your sense of timing. The way you hold back when others rush in. You don't talk much. You're careful with your words. But when you do speak, people listen. There's something in the way you pause, the way your words land, not like a hammer, but like a long, slow gust of wind moving through the trees. One of your favorite things to do, when no one's around, is climb up onto a tree stump and give imaginary speeches. You imitate the preachers you've heard in revival tents. You practice sounding like someone else, bolder, louder, more certain. But you never really forget the sadness. It's always near. Melancholy is like a soft gray shawl you've worn since childhood. It doesn't stop you from smiling, but it wraps itself around your thoughts sometimes, especially at night, when the fire dies down and the cold creeps back in. That sadness becomes a kind of fuel. You carry it with quiet dignity, almost as if it belongs to everyone, and you've just volunteered to hold a little more of it. And even though your world is still tiny, mostly cornfields, creeks, and cabins, you begin to wonder about places beyond the horizon. You hear about cities. About Congress. About the way laws are made, and unmade. You read about kings and revolutions, and you think, maybe words can build something, after all. You're nearly 17 when you lose your sister, Sarah. She dies in childbirth, and suddenly, your family seems smaller again. You don't cry, not in front of anyone. But you chop more wood that week than usual. Harder. Longer. And then you read late into the night. A quirky, little detail: to save money on paper, you often wrote on the back of wooden shingles, little pine scraps meant for rooftops. You'd lean close to the fire and press the charcoal into the grain of the wood, slowly shaping letters until your hand cramped. And you'd save them, too. Tuck them into corners. Under the mattress. Between floorboards. By now, your reputation is growing. Neighbors know you as that Lincoln boy who reads. Some say it with admiration. Others with suspicion. Reading doesn't plow a field, after all. It doesn't raise a barn. But they respect you nonetheless. Sometimes they ask you to write letters for them, to cousins, judges, distant friends. You sit at their tables and transcribe their words with care, adding a touch of your own rhythm. And when you're done, they often say the same thing: you've got away with it. Eventually, you begin to dream of more. Maybe a town. Maybe a job in a store. Maybe even the law. But not tonight. Tonight, you're still just a boy on the floor, the fire low, a book resting gently on your chest. Your eyes blink slowly. The words begin to blur. You smell the pine logs crackling, the faint scent of bacon from supper. Your fingers twitch lightly as you drift, the book slipping an inch toward the floor. And in your sleep, you dream not of empires, not of battles, but of words. Small, simple, solid things. Quiet truths that light up the dark. The river is wider than anything you've ever seen. You're 17 now, long-limbed, sunburned, your hands tougher than leather and calloused from years of swinging axes and hauling plows. The land has shaped you, quietly, like wind carves a stone over time. But this is different. You're standing on the banks of the Mississippi River, staring at a flatboat. It's creaky and splintered, with barrels of goods stacked aboard: cornmeal, pork, tobacco, and lard. You and another young man have been hired by a local merchant, Denton Offit, to take it down south, all the way to New Orleans. You've never been so far from home. Never seen the world beyond the trees and fields you were raised in. Your father lets you go, reluctantly. He doesn't see the point. But you do. Something inside you wants to move, not just across the river, but toward something larger. Something unknown. You push off from the shore, oars creaking, the boat lurching into the current. The river carries you slowly, like a lullaby, slow, wide sweeps of muddy water, sunlight winking off the surface, banks lined with willows and birds that whistle in a language you don't know. You pass other boats, wave to strangers, sleep on deck under stars that don't look quite the same. The nights are warm, the days hot, and the work hard. But you're free. You eat meals from tin plates and trade stories with passing rafts. You even tell jokes, clumsy ones, but they land. Your voice is deepening now, though it still rises strangely when you laugh. Then you reach New Orleans. And it's unlike anything you've ever imagined. The streets bustle with life: French, Spanish, English, and Creole voices mix in the air. The markets smell of spices and sweat. You see cafes, cigar shops, carriages, ladies in gloves and men in top hats, music pouring out of open doors. And, for the first time, you see slavery up close. You'd heard of it, of course. Kentucky had it. But now you see people, black men, women, and children, shackled together. You see them sold. Examined. Prodded. Bought like cattle. It shakes something deep inside you. You don't say much, but it settles in your stomach like a cold stone. A quiet kind of fury. A sorrow that you won't shake for the rest of your life. Years later, you'll recall this moment. You'll tell friends it was the first time you truly saw the evil of it, saw human beings treated like freight. You don't yet know what to do about it. But you know you'll remember. As you prepare to leave the city, something else happens, a strange little episode that stays with you for years. One night, while the flatboat is docked, you and your crewmates are attacked by a group of river pirates. They try to steal the cargo. One even swings a club at your shoulder. But you fight back. You raise a wooden pole and strike fast. Your long arms work like levers. The fight doesn't last long. The men retreat into the shadows. But it's the first time you really stand your ground, not just with words, but with action. And it surprises you how natural it feels. When you return home, you're different. You've seen things. You carry yourself taller. You speak a little more confidently. Denton Offit is so impressed by your work that he offers you a job running a general store in New Salem, Illinois. And just like that, you say goodbye to Indiana. The new town is small, dusty, and odd, perched on a bluff above the Sangamon River. You arrive with a satchel of clothes and a mind full of things you can't quite put into words yet. But the people take to you. You're awkward, sure. Your clothes don't fit quite right. You walk stiffly, like your body hasn't caught up with its own growth. But there's a kindness in your face. A softness behind the eyes. And a surprising sharpness behind your slow smile. You start working at the store. You tell stories, weigh nails and sugar, and help folks with their letters. You wrestle for fun, literally. There's a local tough guy, Jack Armstrong, who challenges you. The town gathers to watch. At first, it's close. He nearly pins you. But you push back, firm, calm, not angry. You're stronger than you look. And when you finally win, Jack extends a hand. You've got sand in you, he says. And from that day forward, he and his boys have your back. You become something of a legend in New Salem. A gentle giant. Folks say you walk miles to return a few extra cents. That you borrow books from neighbors and read every page twice. That you can tell a story so well, even the dogs quiet down to listen. One neighbor swears you read a book while walking into a tree, and apologized to the tree. It's here, in this sleepy town on the Sangamon, that something begins to shift. You're not just surviving anymore. You're becoming. The boy who read by firelight now debates politics behind the store counter. The quiet thinker from Indiana now has a voice people listen to. And one evening, under a pink sky, with the river calm and the trees whispering in the wind, someone asks you if you've ever thought about running for office. You smile, slow and thoughtful. Maybe you have. But for now, you lean back on a wooden bench, arms crossed behind your head, and watch the sun dip below the hills. You think about New Orleans. About the faces you saw there. About the wide, wide river. And how far it might still carry you. You fall asleep thinking of speeches you haven't written yet. Laws you haven't studied. Places you haven't seen. And the boat, somewhere in your memory, keeps drifting slowly south. New Salem isn't much. Just a scatter of buildings nestled between prairie grasses and the gentle curve of the Sangamon River. But to you, it feels like a beginning. The wooden storefront creaks under your boots, the bell above the door jangling softly as you step into a space that smells of tobacco, leather, and faintly sour apples. You've gone from ferrying goods down the Mississippi to standing behind your own counter now. It's not a grand life, but it's a settled one. You're lanky, awkward, with a strange sort of gravity in your eyes that people notice even if they don't mention it. You're polite to a fault, funny when you want to be, and so honest it borders on inconvenient. It's not long before folks around town begin calling you Honest Abe. Not as a joke, almost as a quiet kind of respect. The store you run isn't exactly yours. You're a co-owner, though your partner isn't exactly dependable. Business is slow, and there are days when the ledger bleeds red ink no matter how tightly you stretch your coin. But you open the doors each morning anyway, sweep the floor, restack the shelves. There's dignity in showing up, even when the world isn't clapping. Between tending the shop, you talk. And boy, do you talk. You swap stories with travelers, debate politics with locals, and slowly become the man people turn to for advice, mediation, even jokes. You're not flashy. But you have this way of listening that makes people feel real. And in a town like New Salem, that's a currency more valuable than gold. Your nights are often quiet. A little lamp flickering near the window, a borrowed book propped on your knee, the fire crackling low. Sometimes you read aloud to yourself. Shakespeare, law books, the Bible. You like the way the words fill the space. It makes the log walls feel a little less lonely. And you study. Always study. You're teaching yourself law, poring over Blackstone's commentaries by candlelight, your lips barely moving as your eyes scan line after line. You don't have a degree. No fancy schooling. But that doesn't matter to you. You're teaching yourself because you have to, because something inside you won't stop reaching. But New Salem isn't just about the shop or the books. It's also where you fall in love, or try to. A woman named Anne Rutledge. Her eyes are soft, her laugh gentle. The two of you talk beneath oak trees, your long legs stretched into the weeds, words tumbling between you like creek water. It's never official, never sealed with any ceremony. But it's real. Real enough that when she dies suddenly in the summer of 1835, something inside you crumples. You don't get over it quickly. You withdraw. You speak less. Some nights you lie flat on the floor of your cabin, arms folded over your chest, eyes open to the shadows dancing across the ceiling. You say to a friend that you can't imagine ever feeling right again. And honestly, you don't, at least not for a long time. People worry about you. They speak in hushed tones, say things like melancholy, and spells, and he was never quite the same after. And maybe they're right. But even in your grief, you keep going. You haul yourself out of bed, lace up your boots, and open that creaky store again. Here's a strange little detail most folks miss: even though the store eventually fails, and it does, you refuse to walk away from your debts. You could. No one would blame you. But you don't. You take odd jobs. Survey land. Haul barrels. Anything to slowly pay off what you owe. It takes years. But you do it. Every last cent. They call it your national debt. You just shrug and smile. New Salem starts to fade eventually. People drift away. The town shrinks like an old coat left too long in the rain. But by then, you've planted something in the soil there. Not roots, those never quite took, but character. Reputation. A version of yourself that's taller than even your 6'4" frame. It's around this time you try your hand at politics again. Not in some grand hall, but in local meetings, muddy taverns, and sunlit gatherings on the edge of cornfields. You lose, at first. But you learn. And by 1834, you win a seat in the Illinois state legislature. When you pack your bag to leave for Vandalia, it's not heavy. A few shirts. A comb. And maybe a small, worn copy of the Constitution folded into your coat pocket. You leave the storefront behind, empty shelves, dusty counters, and that same old bell that rang every time someone stepped through. As the wagon pulls away, you look back once. Not with longing, not really. Just a soft nod. New Salem made you. Broke you. And in some quiet way, saved you too. That night, on the road, you sleep under the stars. No roof. No walls. Just the wind, the chirr of crickets, and the knowledge that something is beginning again. You arrive in Vandalia, the old Illinois state capital, with a borrowed coat and boots that squeak. The roads are muddy, the buildings squat and drafty, the chambers dimly lit with smoky lamps and the smell of tobacco thick in the air. You are now a lawmaker, barely 30 years old, and even you aren't quite sure how that happened. But it's real. You sit in the House, tall and quiet, your knees brushing the bench in front of you, trying to look like you belong. The other legislators are older, flashier, more polished. But they notice you. Not because you talk over people. But because when you do speak, it's like striking flint. Thoughtful. Clear. Dryly funny. You don't drink. You don't swear much. You keep your head down and your ears open. But what really separates you is your memory, razor sharp, and your sense of right and wrong, unbending. There's a moment, early on, when a vote is taken on a resolution praising slavery. Almost everyone around you stands in support. You don't. You stay seated. Silent. When pressed, you put your protest into writing, that slavery is unjust, and you can't support it, even if it costs you politically. And it does. But you don't come here to blend in. You come to learn. To watch. To sharpen. In the quiet hours between sessions, you read law. Always the law. You memorize statutes like other men memorize scripture. The neat logic of it appeals to you, the way it bends human messiness into rules, order, protection. Eventually, you pass the bar. No law school. No professor. Just ink-stained fingers, sleepless nights, and dog-eared books. You open a practice in Springfield with a partner and start to earn your keep not by lifting barrels, but by lifting words. The courtroom becomes your new stage. You walk in wearing a worn suit and that tall stovepipe hat, black, battered, instantly noticeable. Your voice is higher pitched than people expect, twangy, but your stories, they catch fire. You don't just argue. You illustrate. Imagine a farmer on the witness stand, stubborn as a mule. You don't press. You walk to the jury box and say, "Gentlemen, let me tell you a little story about a man I once knew back in Indiana who wouldn't climb out of a well till he was paid for falling in." And they laugh. But they also get it. You develop a reputation, fair, prepared, relentless, and kind. You charge little to the poor. Sometimes nothing. You let people pay you in chickens, potatoes, wood. $1 is worth more to them than it is to you. You also ride the 8th Judicial Circuit, 2,000 miles on horseback, across prairie and mud, from county to county. You pack light, a change of shirt, a few documents, and a book of poetry. Maybe Byron. Maybe Burns. Something to read by the fire after court has adjourned. The judges like you. The lawyers like you. Even the juries, especially the juries, like you. You aren't slick, but you're true. Here's a strange little case, a man accused of murder. You pore over the witness statements, then realize something doesn't fit. A key witness claims he saw the crime by moonlight. You check the almanac. The moon that night wasn't bright, it was barely a sliver. You present that quietly in court. No theatrics. Just facts. The jury lets the man go. He walks free because you noticed a missing moon. Politics never really leaves you, though. You're pulled back in, slowly, steadily. You serve another term. You speak out against President Polk and the war with Mexico, calling it unjust, built on shaky pretexts. It's not a popular stance. People hiss when you talk. Newspapers mock you. Even allies distance themselves. But you don't retract a word. You speak with what you call plain truth. You're not rich. You still sleep in shared beds when you travel. You still write letters in your awkward, looping hand, folded 4 times before being sealed. But your mind, your voice, it's becoming known. And then there's Mary. Mary Todd. Daughter of a slaveholding Kentucky family. Sharp-tongued, well-read, politically ambitious. She sees something in you, some potential you can't yet name. You court her. Then pull away. Then come back. The engagement is broken, then mended, then solidified. She's complicated. So are you. But in 1842, you marry in her sister's parlor. You wear a borrowed ring. It doesn't quite fit. Home life is turbulent. You argue. You drift. You're often gone on the circuit. But you love your children deeply, sometimes to a fault. You let them climb over you while you write, tolerate their noise while you read. They are your quiet joy in an increasingly loud world. You run for U.S. Senate once. Then again. You lose. The sting stays with you. But not forever. You tell yourself, every step, even the backward ones, lead forward somehow. It's around this time that you begin to sharpen your words, not for courtrooms now, but for crowds. There's a shift happening. The country is beginning to tear at its seams. The issue of slavery is rising like floodwater. And you're beginning to speak with more fire. More clarity. More conviction. You once whispered truths. Now, you're beginning to raise your voice. You're standing behind a rough wooden counter, watching as townsfolk wander in, hand you letters, or ask for stamps you barely have. You've become New Salem's postmaster now, an odd job for someone who still can't afford a proper desk. Sometimes, you carry the mail in your hat. Literally. You read every newspaper that comes through, too, nobody tells you not to, and how else are you going to stay informed in a place where the nearest library is a day's ride away? The town isn't much, but your curiosity is endless. You've begun studying law, not with a teacher, not in a school, but the way only you would, in the back of a store, by candlelight, flipping through borrowed law books with pages so worn the ink smudges your fingers. You're broke, wearing clothes someone else probably died in, but you're serious about this. Outside the shop, you spend your nights with the New Salem Debating Society. A dozen men in suspenders and muddy boots argue over government, banking, slavery. Some of them scoff when you speak, your pants are patched, and your jokes are fast, but they listen. Because when you get going, the words don't just come, they land. You talk like you're carving your thoughts into wood, each sentence clean and necessary. You're still Honest Abe. That's what people call you now. Not because you're perfect, far from it, but because you don't lie. You don't even exaggerate, unless the joke demands it. You'll admit when you don't know something. That strange humility starts to get noticed. One day, someone asks if you'd defend them in court. You're not quite ready, but you say yes. You figure it out. Slowly, case by case, mistake by mistake, you learn how to argue without shouting and how to make a jury lean forward. You quote scripture, poetry, farming tools, whatever they know. It works. There's a kind of loneliness in all this, too. At night, you write strange, heartfelt letters to friends. You wrestle with melancholy, that's what people called depression back then. You say it comes, as naturally as the dew. Sometimes you sit alone in the woods and don't come back till dark. You also laugh a lot. Big belly laughs that fill rooms. You tell stories, long and winding and absurd, sometimes with punchlines that come 5 minutes late. You do impressions. You love a dirty joke. You love a clever one even more. You meet new faces in town, some forgettable, some not. One in particular, a man named Joshua Speed. You two will become so close, people will whisper. In an age when men share beds without much fuss, yours is a friendship full of shared thoughts and doubts. You talk politics, law, loneliness. You even break off an engagement around this time, a woman named Mary Owens, because something just didn't feel right. You're honest about that too. The country outside your little village is changing. The issue of slavery keeps boiling up. You've already made it clear where you stand. Back in the Illinois House, you were one of the only ones who dared to speak out publicly against it, saying, "Slavery is founded in both injustice and bad policy." It wasn't popular. But you wrote it down. Signed your name under it. Because that's what you do. The more you study, the more you see law as not just rules but a way to help people untangle knots. You aren't a flashy speaker, not yet, but you're careful, and you're fair. You're the kind of guy who, if someone can't pay, might just slip their fee back under the table. Not because you want praise. Just because it feels right. One story from these years, a man gives you money to buy a barrel of household goods. Inside, buried beneath broken dishes and a moldy blanket, you find an entire copy of Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England, the most important legal book in the country. It changes your life. Not because of fate. Because you read it. All of it. Twice. You lose elections. You go broke. You fail. Over and over. But you keep going. And somewhere in there, people begin to notice that you're different, not flashy, not handsome, not powerful. But trustworthy. Strange. Gentle. And smart. One newspaper editor writes that you look like a man who was made by a careless god. That's not wrong. Your clothes never quite fit. Your hands are too big. Your ears stick out like open shutters. But when you speak, something happens. Even people who disagree with you stay quiet. The world around you is still slow, horses clip-clop, letters arrive late, candles flicker, but your mind is moving fast. You're beginning to believe that your life could mean more than chopping wood and carrying mail. That maybe, just maybe, your words could go farther than the edge of town. And that idea, small and flickering as it is, settles inside you. Quiet and stubborn. Like a flame. Because all around you, the country is tugging in different directions. East toward money, south toward slavery, north toward factories, west toward land. And in the middle of it all, in this barely there town with muddy roads and smoky chimneys, you're beginning to imagine that somehow, though you have no money, no schooling, and no famous name, you might be able to help guide it. You don't tell anyone yet. You wouldn't dare. But you're thinking it. And that's where change always starts. You didn't exactly dream of politics. Not really. It felt like something for polished men in silk waistcoats, not rail splitters with patched elbows. But somehow, here you are, standing on the floor of the Illinois State Legislature, your knees pressed against the back of the bench in front of you, trying to look like you belong. You're barely 30, and even you aren't quite sure how you got here. The chamber is dim. The air smells of tobacco, oil lamps, and muddy boots. Men talk over one another, sometimes shouting, sometimes laughing. There are no microphones. No heat, either. Just ideas, noise, and egos. You speak less than most. But when you do, the room quiets. Because your words land the way hammers do, slow, strong, and straight. You listen more than you talk. It's your secret weapon. You let them argue themselves into corners, then you gently tug on the thread that unravels the whole thing. You don't bully. You ask questions. Clever ones. And when you get that little half-smile, the one that means someone's finally seeing it your way, you know you're on the right path. Not everyone likes you. You're tall and awkward. You make weird jokes. You argue with facts instead of bluster. But people can't help noticing that when you say something, you mean it. And that means something. You live in a boarding house now. Share rooms. Eat bland stew. Scribble letters with ink you can barely afford. You're dirt poor, but you're making a name for yourself. You read law books between sessions, often with your boots off and your toes wiggling near the fire. There's always a book in your hand, a story on your lips, and some wrinkle of justice in your mind. Sometimes, when sessions stretch into the evening, you and the other young legislators take long walks. The stars above Springfield shimmer like frost on glass. You talk about the shape of the country, the moral problem of slavery, the balance between power and people. Some nights you walk for miles, not to get anywhere, just to think aloud in the company of someone who's also thinking. You believe in compromise, mostly. But not when it comes to right and wrong. On slavery, you're clear, it's wrong. Period. You're not an abolitionist, not yet, but the seed is there. You believe this country can't stay split between free and slave forever. That it'll break. You don't know how soon. And then, marry Todd. She's nothing like what people expect for you. You, with your stammer and your self-doubt. Her, with her sharp tongue and sharper mind. She comes from money. Knows politics better than you do. Reads Shakespeare. Wears perfume. Can shoot a look through a brick wall. You meet at a party, under low candlelight, the sound of violins squeaking politely in the next room. You talk about Henry Clay. She's impressed. You're confused. No one's ever found your politics charming before. It's not a smooth courtship. You're awkward. You vanish for stretches of time. At one point, you break off the engagement without even being sure why, something inside you just panics. But you come back. You always come back. Eventually, you marry her. Not in a mansion. Not in a church. In a friend's living room. A quick ceremony. A handful of guests. You wear a borrowed suit. She wears a steady gaze. People whisper. You're too poor. She's too proud. But you both know there's something underneath, something shared, a belief that your lives might matter in more than just the usual ways. After marriage, you settle into a small house on 8th Street. It's modest, with creaky floors and peeling paint. But it's home. You study at night while Mary reads. You both love poetry. You both argue, loudly. You both believe in ambition. Fiercely. Then comes Robert. Your firstborn son. You hold him like he's glass, too delicate for this loud world. But parenthood doesn't shield you from sorrow. Not long after, your second son, Eddie, falls ill. You stay up all night, pacing the floor, whispering prayers to a ceiling that doesn't answer. He dies in your arms. That grief never quite leaves. It lingers in the walls of the house. In Mary's eyes. In your silences. But life moves on. You hang your shingle as a lawyer. You begin riding the legal circuit, traveling town to town, sleeping in inns and barns, trying cases big and small. Land disputes. Theft. Murder. You once defend a man accused of killing someone with a wooden plank. You win the case using a farmer's almanac to prove the moonlight couldn't have lit the scene like the witness claimed. You're good at this. Not because you shout the loudest, but because you listen the closest. You watch jurors' eyes. You understand people. You make them laugh, then make them think. You also begin to hate injustice. Truly hate it. You take cases others won't. Defend people others ignore. You get paid in chickens, sometimes. Or nothing. You don't mind. And always, in the background, politics. You keep an eye on Washington. On the spread of slavery. On the growing rift between North and South. The nation feels like a rope stretched too tight, fraying strand by strand. You give speeches. Tent meetings. Fairs. Debates in barns and dusty schoolhouses. You talk about liberty. About equality. About the words written in 1776 and how the country keeps failing to live up to them. You don't yell. You don't scold. You simply remind people of what they already know to be right. And slowly, very slowly, your voice begins to carry. You're no longer just Honest Abe. You're becoming something else, something larger, quieter, and heavier. A man people trust with things they don't understand. A man who seems to carry the burden of something not yet named. And deep down, in the quieter parts of yourself, you wonder. Could you lead more than a courtroom? Could you lead a nation? You don't have an answer yet. But the question won't leave. It follows you like a shadow down muddy roads and echoing hallways. A whisper you can't quite shake.